Hello and welcome to Tai'Shar Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Sam.
I'm Will.
We're here to discuss the television program once again, season 1, episode 5.
Very exciting. I enjoyed this one.
Me too. I was going to say this one's a talkie.
There is considerably less action in this one, but that doesn't make it bad.
It makes me think it's setting up a doozy of a episode 6.
Yeah.
Which backs up the Reddit users theory, a random Reddit users theory that episode 6 is going to be the one to write home about.
We'll see. This one is called Blood Calls Blood. And if my first criticism of it is actually that title, because the title is taken from a chapter in The Great Hunt that I really enjoyed some of the content of, and none of it is present here. And so it's
point.
just
just like a call out to a chapter that has nothing, no bearing at all on.
Right.
I mean, there's certainly blood in the episode.
Right. Yes.
But it's like different reasons.
I don't know. I was just a little frustrated by that. I'm going to have a lot of good things to say and a handful of little nitpicks throughout this.
Good. I'm glad you'll have a lot to say because I literally finished watching the episode a minute before we started recording this. So I can't say I've seen it a lot of times, although it is fresh on my mind.
I've probably watched this one. I don't know. So I watched it several times. So the cold open this time is fairly cold.
It looks cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's snow on the ground.
Yeah, it's like Hawaii. That's a current events joke. So if you're hearing this a month from now and go, what is he talking about? I guess we had snow in Hawaii, but it may have just been on a mountain where they have snow anyway.
Yeah. It's just an ethereal, emotional scene.
It's the aftermath of our battle with Logain's Gildanen army.
Right. We see them.
My first thought is those are some shallow graves they're digging.
Yes, you're not the only person who's thought that. I think several people. I
would dig a deeper grave for my dog. Seriously.
Also, I noticed that Moraine uses the Borderlander send off. May the last embrace of the mother.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask if that was in the book. It's just honestly that sounds like something you'd hear on Game of Thrones. Seriously.
And that's
the mother, the father, all the gods of
That's very much a Shinaran thing. They say that they refer to Earth like Mother Earth, and so
I honestly, when I'd forgotten about that entirely, I kind of was like, does she mean like the Amerlin seat or
no? Again, nitpick here, but Moraine wouldn't say that. She's not from the Borderlands. I don't think either Karenni.
Certainly doesn't. If she is, it's not covered at all in the show. You would have thought if she was from the Borderlands that maybe Lan would have talked to her about something about the Borderlands,
right,
at some point to establish that.
Again, nitpick.
The only thing you can say about it is Moraine hangs out with Lan a lot, and he's from the Borderlands, so it's what all the cool kids are doing.
Yeah. Maybe. Obviously, big emotional scene. Then we go into the title sequence. And out of the title sequence, we're landing in, again, with the Aes Sedai and all that. They're traveling. Poor Logain has got a rope around his neck. He just looks pitiful.
Mm-hmm. Traveling and talking. Yep.
Yeah. Little conversation with Moraine and Lan, where Moraine talks about the White Tower not really feeling like home at this point.
And there's the White Tower.
Oh, yes, the White Tower. There is kind of this funny thing that happens a few times in this episode where people are like, hey, there's the White Tower. And then you look, and they would have had to have seen it way long before they're seeing it now, because it's very tall and very obvious.
It is not the way I would have pictured it, but I don't know, man. I think I was picturing like the Disney castle or something. It's just not right anyway in my head.
I was straight up. I realized I was basically picturing Orthanc from Lord of the Rings, which is not really the way it's described, but that's just what I had in my head. So right after that, we go to another group traveling. I watched this a few times, and I wondered if some people got confused when it goes to Rand and Mat.
A month later.
If it seemed like they were part of the same party. I don't know. That part was a little confusing.
Oh, yeah. That's fair. You'd have to just remember that they weren't, I guess would be. I mean, since it's a month later, you could see how someone might be confused by that. Rand kind of looks like a ranger. Mat looks like a possessed homeless person. Right. Rand looks pretty BA. I mean, he's sporting the hood and the bow and He's working for him.
He's straight up. He looks like he did step right out of Fellowship of the Ring. Matt is not looking very well. They come upon a stone with some interesting writing, which there are a few of these in this episode. Now, in the spoiler section, we could talk about what it might be.
What it may or may not be.
Right. I actually just think that are just supposed to be like signposts.
I buy that. Yeah, I would be a little bit disappointed if this was the other thing, because that doesn't really quite match up to my. Yeah, I'm just not going to try to say it without us getting the spoiler section. And then Rand recognizes a mountain.
No comment. Just he's like, hey, I think I've seen that mountain before. I don't know. Might be significant.
Yeah. Then we get our sweeping vista. And I'll be honest with you, for a good while, I really thought they were in Camelin. I really did. Like, I mean, I'm sure they said it. I was in the car. I wasn't paying close attention. So Matt says Tar-Valon.
Yeah,
fine.
He says Tar-Valon.
But really, I should have missed that. I thought for a while they were in Camelin. And to be fair, they should have been in the books. It makes sense that they're not.
Right.
It makes a lot more sense that they're in Tar-Valon. I'll start saying whatever.
Well, to be fair to any book readers, and for anybody who's not a book reader and watching this for the first time, this is a sizable change.
Yeah, this is wholly manufactured. Any time they're in Tar-Valon in this season is manufactured.
Yeah, so it's, I think, supposed to be a little bit of mashing up some of the events of what would have been Camelin. It's a tiny
change. And the fact that they can meet Loyal here, we're going to talk about that, and the fact that I guess they didn't have Elaine cast yet, / didn't want her, as Rafe has said before, casting someone and then appearing in a scene and then not appearing for the rest of the season is problematic. So it makes sense that they would not want to introduce Elaine here as they. Should I even say the name Elaine? Am I allowed to say that? I don't know.
I just saying that. To me, if you don't know who it is, that's not a spoiler. That's just a person you don't know. So yeah, there's a character named Elaine.
I didn't say that she's the Pope, for crying out loud. Yeah, that there's a character named Elaine that should have appeared in these scenes with Rand specifically, and does not, because they cut that scene out because it makes sense for her to appear in season 2.
Yeah, and I mean, there's several other characters, to be fair, that are also introduced that in that same scene that presumably we will meet later on. So. Yeah,
but otherwise, if you, like I did, missed that line where Matt says it's Tar-Valon, you would think for a while that this was Camelin without noting the architecture, because these scenes are very similar to scenes that happen in Camelin. And he even says this is an innkeeper Tom knows. I don't know. He doesn't say who it is, so I don't know if it's the same innkeeper from Camelin that it would have been.
I don't think it is. I think that's just a little device to kind of... I'll tell you something that you probably didn't notice, especially if you were watching on your phone, because I was watching it on my huge TV and I didn't even notice it like the first 2 times until somebody said he appears in the background. But Padan Fain is in the background as they're going into the inn, and
like he's following them.
Yes, they.
I'll have to go back and look for that.
Once more, you'll turn up when you get a chance to turn up the volume. Right before they come in, you hear his whistling, the same whistling he was doing when he was entering the 2 rivers. And he is in the background. The focus shifts as Matt steps out of the frame to go into the inn, and you can see him on the far end. And then they cut to a shot of the inn, and in the foreground, you see his clasped hands on the far right of the image, and he exits frame, similar to the way he did the last time we saw him. But it's all very subtle. I would not have known this.
I 100% would have missed that if you hadn't said it.
So Fain is still in effect. We can safely assume that he is up to no good, considering he just was somehow allowed to just walk off during the Battle of Winter Night. He's still here today and seems to be shady. So, but then moving on.
Matt's not interested in leaving the room. He's saying a lot of kind of paranoid and upsetting things, which is all in keeping with what we would expect to happen at this point.
We're getting, I think, the right amount of Matt being something's going on with him, but also we feel like it's not right. It's like it's not him.
Yeah.
And I think
he's worried that he killed the family. Rand said no, it was the Fade.
Last time we wondered if Rand was going to suspect Mat, but it's clear no, Rand truly does believe there's no way Mat would have been capable of something like that. So,
all right, cut back to Tar Valon and Nynaeve, Lan, Moiraine. White Tower's pretty cool. We saw a lot of scenes in this episode were in the trailer. So there were times where we were like speculating, like, who's that? What are they doing? And that were scenes that happened in this episode that kind of put it all together.
It was funny. And actually, even two of the tiny little teasers that they put out that had clips, like Moiraine says, do not underestimate the women of this tower. In this scene, she says that to Nynaeve. And later on, Mat says to Rand, let's make a deal. That was in the teaser that showed the dagger. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a lot of material came from Moiraine is talking to Nynaeve about kind of what the future holds for her now that it's clear that not only can she channel, but she is a very powerful channeler.
They're going to want you to be a novice ASAP. And if you don't, you should maybe stay out of sight and stay low. The
interesting thing here is I feel like while this is different from the book, it still feels somewhat accurate to the book. Like,
yeah, all these scenes, so many of these scenes being, I agree completely, being not in the book or complete or different enough. It just gets back to the idea that they're being true to the character. So I haven't minded them.
It kind of makes clear that Moiraine is typically kind of off the reservation when it comes to things with the White Tower. Like she's a little bit of a maverick.
She's not there very often. They're kind of all in a later scene. Alana says, "What have you been doing?" Or Leandrin, one of them.
And they all don't know what she's been up to. She clearly kind of operates on her own agenda a little bit. And, you also get Nynaeve not being crazy about Moiraine, not really wanting to submit to her or anything. And yet, at this point, she's one of the only people she could probably trust in the whole tower. So she's kind of stuck. Then we move on to the scene with the Tinkers and with Perrin and Egwene. The more time we spend with the Tinkers, the more I like them. Yes, this is slow.
I do like little detail I like at this point, and something that I noticed about the fact that a month later they all look a little different. Like Perrin's hair is kind of braided like Aram's. I like that. It's good detail.
Looks like Egwene is wearing a Tinker cloak there. So they've been hanging out for a while. They talk about the Way of the Leaf some more and
turnip curry.
Everything's all fun and games until the White Cloaks show up.
It's always all fun and games until the White Cloaks show up.
Valda sees Perrin and Egwene and recognizes them from when he...
Apparently, seeing them twice is enough for him to confirm that they're dark friends, I guess.
Yes.
Or that he needs to kill one of them.
I will say,
it's a little weird.
While it's clear Valda's just a bad dude, he's just a psychopath.
Yeah. Yes.
He doesn't need much of an excuse to
torture and kill someone.
Yeah.
As he baldly admits later.
But at the same time, I did feel like you're saying, that was a little weak. Like I needed there to be something else.
Like, I saw you with those other people. Now I see you with these Tinkers. So that must mean you are a channeler and or a dark friend.
At the same time, I do understand how a lot of times they talk about how the White Cloaks see dark friends everywhere, and so this is just really driving that home early in the series.
It does appear that Valda is much more interested in murdering Aes Sedai than having anything to do with dark friends. Like he just doesn't. Yeah. He's not looking for dark friends. He's looking for Aes Sedai to murder.
Yeah, specifically,
or anyone who can channel. Really.
Yeah, he does seem to have a kind of a vendetta against channelers.
Which, as I said last time, I like the idea of the White Cloaks being a little more menacing, kind of being having a witch hunter thing going on. It works.
Yeah. So then we get this moment where the Tinkers lock arms to try to prevent Valda from taking Perrin and Egwene.
All right, commence with punching them in the face.
Yes. Was like, this is really doing a great job of making you hate these guys. Yeah. And then, of course, they end up
the White Cloaks surround them, which is one of the scenes from either a teaser or the trailer. I can't remember which.
Yeah.
And
I think it was the trailer.
The scene that Rafe specifically pointed out as saying the character looked like they were dead. And so Aram had been knocked to the ground. Certainly not dead, I wouldn't think, at this point.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we will see Aram again. All right, so the next scene,
the big reveal that I that I inadvertently mentioned earlier, but Loyal.
Yes. Now, I just want to stop and say, first of all, they nailed Loyal's character. So, like, so much so that, to me, the fact that some people have complained about the way the makeup looks, and I almost want to, but at the same time, I feel like
the mannerisms, the voice, everything else is so on point. I agree, but he does look like the Big Lebowski mixed with a Klingon.
Exactly. Thank you. I was like, he's like the. It's like they're going for just the happier cousins to the Klingons. Like
that is literally what he looks like.
Is what it feels like. Even the way he talks.
All of that, but it all works. Yeah.
But at the same time, they so got his character right. I don't even want to complain about the fact that I'm not loving the way he looks. Here's the thing. I like the fact that it's practical.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like the way I pictured it, I do like the fact that they went practical with it.
That's a choice the show has made to go more practical. And it's going to have mixed results. I mean, my buddy was talking about how the Trollocs, he's like, I don't know how I feel about the Trollocs. He's like, they're kind of like Mr. Tumnus in Berserker mode.
I had someone else tell me that the first time they saw the Trollocs, they weren't fully on board either.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be some of that with the practical approach they're taking. But yeah, I'm with you. The fact that they nailed Loyal character-wise, mannerisms so well, I'm okay with it.
Hamad Animashan, I'm not sure. To me, it's like he so perfectly gets it. The fact that Rand has a sword pointing at him and he's just, how's it going? You're doing good. I had somebody chase me with a knife the other day. It almost upset me. And the whole business of him continuing to talk every time somebody leaves.
Yeah. So hasty.
Him talking, saying things that whether people know or don't know, they don't care about, like him later on listing off the braid is a rite of passage of the two rivers, and all that stuff. The other thought I had was, oh man, not that the show has been hugely disappointing in any one way, but this right here, I was like, yes, this is what I need. I need this character. I need this little bit of humor.
Agreed.
And really squarely separates Wheel of Time from anything close to Grimdark. It's funny because I've seen I think a lot of people had the same reaction that I did, which was, I think I saw the leaked image that, and I was like,
I did too. And I was like, exactly the same reaction. Like, what are they doing? That's not all right.
And my only thought was that's got to be like not complete. That's got to be like not accurate or whatever.
It turns out it was not too far away, but it's just the fact that it was a still image and not the character.
But then hearing him talk, seeing him walk around the room, picking up books, and
the mannerisms, the expressions, the dialogue,
the voice,
the voice,
the dialogue, just like every little thing.
He needs a haircut, but otherwise, it's all good.
And you could continue to nitpick the fact that he has a beard when in the book he's referred to as a beardless ogre at one point, or gear, because of his being young. But then I was like, you know what? I don't care about that. They got it right. They got him right, even if they didn't get like every little visual nitpicky thing that I could get about. So, but anyway, I was just so excited to see him, and it was it's such a, like I said, was such a needed change of pace. And the little back and forth between him and Rand, where he's like, "Oh, an Aielman." He says, "I'm not an Aielman." He's like, "Oh, an Aielman who
doesn't know who says he's not an Aielman from the Two Rivers."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's he's great. Like, "Oh, you're quite an oddity. I like oddities." And you just see completely the character coming out of that. And it's so it's him. All right, enough about that. I just wanted to gush about something for a second.
I'm glad. Yeah, because like you said, there are things to nitpick, and certainly people will nitpick Loyal, but I don't want to. I like what they've done. He's a likable dude. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. And then it makes so much more sense to parade Logain through the streets of Tar Valon than it does Camelin. So that I have no problem with this next scene.
There's another Fane sighting in one of the shots here, by the way. He's down by some bird cages.
It's like,
and he does the same thing. It's funny. He leaves like kind of it's almost like,
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's almost
he was like sitting down, I think.
Yeah. It's almost like the camera sees him, like the audience sees him, and he's like, okay.
Some of the audience sees him anyway. Not this guy.
Exactly.
Humorously, like, and this, I feel like there's little like shout outs to readers of the book here, because Matt has a spot up and on the balcony, and Rand's like, thanks for saving me a spot. Because folks who have not read the book, Rand gets into a misadventure trying to see Logain in the book and falls off of a wall into a garden. Yeah. And so there's this whole thing where he's trying to find a spot to be able to see Logain. And in the show, he just has a spot next to Matt.
Yeah. That is funny. That hadn't occurred to me, but that's great. Little meta moment. Then we get this awesome moment of Logain looking up and seeing the two boys.
And laughs kind of maniacally, seeing Matt and Rand sitting on the balcony, and
Matt seems to be a little more bothered by it.
Yeah, Matt's struggling here, but Rand's like, it's all right, it's all good, man.
And then an important bit
turnips
of dialogue here where Matt says,
"Oh yeah,
let's make a deal. You know,
let's make a deal. This is not a good deal."
Yes, if it turns out one of us can channel, we're not going to let the other
not let him turn into that guy.
Yeah,
presumably, I don't know, stab each other or something. Stab the other one or something.
This is not a line from the books, but it feels like something especially Matt would say. I think it does a good job of showing the concern that there would be if you really thought there was a potential that you could become a person who could channel.
As Matt is feeling perhaps at this moment, kind of worried about all the symptoms he has.
Yeah, exactly. After some discussion, they do both kind of make a pact here, which it'll be interesting to see this slightly more intense view of men who can channel, the way it'll play out for these two characters.
Right. I'm sure this conversation will come back up in some form or fashion later on.
Then we get Steppen.
Steppen is in like his, I guess, funeral whites for Karini.
Yeah. One of the complaints I heard about this episode is that you get a lot of Steppen, who is a completely made up character.
Right.
From not from the books.
It's clearly designed to show the weight of what happens to a warder when an Aes Sedai dies. I mean, that's the goal. I am in agreement that it is a little annoying to have a character not in the books be so prominent for so much of an episode. But to be fair, I would say Jordan doesn't really illustrate it so well, especially in the first few books, you know, what that looks like, kind of lay the groundwork. You know, you hear about it maybe about how a warder who loses their Aes Sedai kind of die, you know, of sadness, but it's not really, there's no illustration of that. So that's kind of the reason this character exists, really, it would seem. We kind of hoped and speculated that there would be more of a story for this character.
I'm disappointed and I'm not disappointed at the same time. We got
because it's a made up character. Yeah, I agree. We got to see his range, certainly.
The actor really...
He's got himself a resume for if he wants to do more fantasy and on TV, he certainly can do that. I'm sure he can get a leading role. 2
solid episodes where he really illustrated what he was capable of. This scene, he talks about his whole life story, which, you know, I have to say, while it was somewhat talky, it's fairly decent writing.
Yeah, I wasn't like looking at my watch or anything.
You quickly get through a sad story that tells you everything you need to know about a character to give them all the pathos you need for the rest of the episode.
Sure. I don't know. I was on the fence about how well it was earned to have a good chunk of an episode devoted to that sadness, that grief.
Sure.
Because we had just met Karini when she died.
Yeah.
We had just met Steppen when he lost his Aes Sedai. It's like, well, but they did a good job with it. I thought they stuck the landing, but I still kind of did have that thought, like, you got to have slow, talky episodes every now and then to set things up. And
I agree with you. I think it's not ideal in one way, but I also agree with it's illustrating an important dynamic that maybe isn't as clear in the book, at least at this point.
I think if you're a person who is annoyed by scenes not from books being in the show, regardless of their quality, you're going to get more and more annoyed as the TV show progresses. Sorry. I think that's just the way it's going to be. The show is adapting. They've said they're adapting the whole series, not Eye of the World. And as a result of doing that, if you're going to try to do that, you cannot just adapt the book. I mean, you can't just use the plot of the book. It's just, it'd be nice to not invent characters, but Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to kill off a character that's in another scene? I mean, maybe find another no name, and maybe, I don't know if Steppen is a character somewhere like Karini was.
I don't think so.
I'm sure there are people who are going to be mad about that and are going to continue to be mad, and are going to just be yelling about that, and that's fine. I
get it, really, honestly.
That's fine.
I understand being frustrated.
As we've said, I think as long as the writing's good, I don't necessarily mind, especially if the goal is to stick to the characters themselves, who the characters are, and to do the world justice, then I don't mind inventing characters having stuff like this. I mean, it's not like they're changing the way the world works fundamentally or anything, or these changing characters that we care about. Not like they, not like they, killed off Nynaeve and Egwene and having a funeral scene here or something. Then we would be screaming also.
It was interesting seeing the scene where Steppen is putting the ring into the kind of that smelting.
Oh yeah, the flame of Tar Valon, I guess. That's what makes me think. You always hear the Admiral seat, the flame of Tar Valon. Well, we have an actual flame of Tar Valon.
And there you go.
Tar Valon, excuse me.
Yes, Tar Valon. Yes, of course. That moment that we talked about in one of the trailers where I think I said, I really don't know what's happening here.
Oh, yeah, we don't know who this character is or what's happening, right?
Yeah, other than like maybe a warder lost his Aes Sedai so we had some idea, but And then right after that, there's a very brief scene that's fairly important that is just Lan walking in and kind of looking at Moraine and having seen what is happening to his friend following the death of his Aes Sedai.
Emotional range for Lan in this episode than we might have expected, which is fine. For sure. I'm good with that. Yeah. I'm glad he's not just a stone.
And then we are back with the White Cloaks, and oh my gosh, how much do you hate this guy? Egwene being like stripped down.
Yeah, at the beginning of the scene, I was like, oh no, what is going to happen here? But no, they're just like scrubbing her very aggressively to clean her off and make her clean in the light or whatever.
With very a fine bristle brush, like the kind of brush you would brush a horse with. Yeah. And I don't know how the experience was watching on a phone. Watching it with my surround sound, the brush sound is so unpleasant.
Yeah, I bet.
I feel like they turned it up to just make it as unpleasant as possible.
Dude is eating again while he's torturing. It's like his thing.
There is kind of a trope of making a person unlikable by having them eat in a scene.
Oh, sure. Game of Thrones certainly does that.
Well, Lord of the Rings did it with Denethor. Yeah. The famous tomato scene.
Yeah, with Ramsay Bolton and Ramsay Snow in Game of Thrones with the sausage. Won't go any further with that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There's lots of scenes where you could say like, oh, yeah, it's someone you're either supposed to hate or someone who is supposed to be kind of cocky.
Or Brad Pitt in every movie he's ever in.
Everything. Yes. That was about to say. Thing. That's, he's
you could excuse it in Ocean's 11, he was always busy. Right. But Moneyball, there's no reason for it there. I like that movie.
And also, we know that's all he's eaten all month.
Right.
Anyway. So, back to this scene. So this is the moment we were talking about where, for some reason, Valda is just completely convinced that Egwene can channel. Mm-hmm. And when she says she can't, he says, oh, then you're not an Aes Sedai because they can't lie. Okay, this presents a bit of a problem to me because in the books, the reason why White Cloaks don't just walk up to every woman and say, are you an Aes Sedai, is because they really don't believe in the three O's.
Sure. I think, I guess it seems like, especially after what Jeffrey Bornhold said in an earlier episode, that it's just a little bit of a different relationship between the Aes Sedai and the White Cloaks in the show. Right. And it clearly seems like there are some established facts, like the White Cloaks aren't complete 9/11 truthers when it comes to listeners. If there's any 9/11 loose change truthers out there, I'd love to hear from you. I don't know. But they're willing to accept kind of a base level of facts when it comes to Aes Sedai, and in Valda's case, that just means they want to murder him more.
Yeah, I think the issue for me is not as much that it's a difference from the book, but that it presents a bit of a logical issue. Okay. So Moraine is standing there wearing all blue, so presumably he knows.
He specifically ask her, "Are you an Aes Sedai?"
Are you an Aes Sedai? And that just seems like an odd. There's a bit of a logic issue there for me. I can go with it because I can go with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that he was suspicious and didn't maybe he sort of enjoys the hunt a little bit and didn't want to just have an out and out battle, or maybe legitimately kind of has enough respect for Aes Sedai to know if he was to call her out and she felt threatened in front of all these white cloaks, she could start throwing fireballs at him. So maybe it's just like a subtlety thing. If he's got her tied down where she presumably can't channel, he can ask her outright, as opposed to an Aes Sedai standing there with her warder next to her. I guess I'm trying to play devil's advocate. I can see your point.
No, that's part of when I say like I can go with it. I can do what you're doing. I can come up with the reasoning. It is, to me, it's just a little problematic to have him have that attitude of, oh yeah, well you can't because the versus not believing in the oaths. Then that makes me wonder, okay, is that just Valda who knows the oaths are real?
Or is it all white cloaks?
All white cloaks, because that changes things significantly for me, because that means that white cloaks know that Aes Sedai can't harm somebody if
because a lot of their kind of rhetoric is around Aes Sedai plotting against them and killing in the name of it, like being all dark friends. And
you have examples in the books of instances of them saying, haha, see, the three oaths are all lies, so they're not good people, because the three oaths are what give them credibility, and if they're lies, then yada yada yada. So if that's not a part of it, I don't mean to make too much over this, but I feel like this is going to be something that it
could cause like a ripple effects of other plot changes as a result of this seemingly minor one. I can buy that. I think there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm sure they have a whiteboard with lines all over it and of like the changes they've made. Like, what effect is that going to have? I hope they do. I hope they've thought through it. And we're not going to pull a loss.
No. One pretty major thing happens in this scene before we move on.
Perrin gets cut, and then his eyes change colors, and you hear something. Here's some wolves howl.
Here's some wolves howling.
Not spoiling, of course, here, but this happens. This scene doesn't happen in the books, I guess is clear to say.
Right.
But his eyes do change colors in the book, and it's one of the things that's never been very satisfying about why or when or how. So sure, why not when he's being cut by Eamon? I don't have a problem with that. Like, you gotta have you need to have something that kicks it off.
I may have even said on the podcast at one point that I could see something like this as a change where there would have to be an incident that inspires that manifesting. And it seems like that's kind of what they did. Although I'm curious to see, because in the books, of course, his eyes change color permanently. And
it does not seem like that was the case here, but it could still happen. And I don't know. I would be okay either way. I mean, because it would look kind of crazy for for Marcus Rutherford to be always walking around with his eyes change colors like that. Like, you would, in the books, characters do react to it, but it would be the sort of thing that it would constantly have to come up in the show. And maybe it will. Maybe that's what they'll do, but it would just be jarring to see him just like walking around town. And maybe that's what they'll do. I don't know. But that is a fair question. Like, if they don't choose to go that route where his eyes change back and forth, I would understand.
I'll be curious to see it. I think they got to change it permanently for a couple of things that, unless they make some, again, it would just be a domino effect. And I could be won over. The next scene is Nynaeve and Steppen coming to visit her. He's clearly been drinking. He is just talking about dealing with the loss. Nynaeve is sympathetic because we have heard about her loss of her mentor. She is feeling a kindredness towards Steppen at this point because of that. And he asks for some goat's tongue tea to help him sleep. After a little conversation, she gives it to him and exits with leaving the door open. Now, I wasn't clear on if when Moiraine left Nynaeve, if she was locked in. I don't think so, but the way that she acts after he leaves is almost like, oh, the door's left open. I guess I'll just wander out now.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And also something in this next scene. So Liandrin comes up and first thing she says, escaped, did you? And
yeah, you can't tell how sarcastic she's being necessarily.
Yeah, and also she's probably just trying to inspire distrust in
Moraine and Nynaeve.
This scene, I just love what Kate Fleetwood is doing in this character.
She's great. She's doing a wonderful job.
Her lips are just pursed just so all the time. The way she and the dialogue where she's, is that a question or a statement? The way she kind of gets carried away when she starts talking about men still controlling this world.
Yeah.
You get a little peek behind the curtain of whatever caused her to have a fairly clear hatred for men. And then the way she says the persimmons are in season right before she leaves is just so like
perfect. She's awful.
Yeah, I hate her.
Yeah.
That little thing she does with her eyes, and then she walks off. I mean, there's a shot of Nynaeve after that, and you can just feel like, I don't like that lady.
Awful.
Go
away. And then a great moment, a difference from the books, but one that works perfectly, where Loial walks into Rand and Matt's room and says, I'm able to go on the tower grounds, and look who I brought back, and walks Nynaeve.
This is a little odd editing choice because we were just with Nynaeve to me, and
sure,
like
this, it's a little jarring.
Pacing wise, it's a little jarring. I don't have a problem with it really,
else,
but it just feels kind of like we missed the scene of Loial wandering around and seeing Nynaeve. Then there's several significant little moments here
Nynaeve,
in a row.
But looks at Matt and says, "Let me see your tongue," and he says, "Get away from me." Gollum-esque.
Right, exactly. I was thinking, Bilbo with when Frodo doesn't let him see the ring.
Right. That's good. Yeah.
That moment.
That's a good comparison.
And she's like, "Oh no, I don't need to see your tongue. That's cool." I was watching with my fiance, and when she said, "Let me see your tongue," she said, "That's a little forward, don't you think?" or something like that. Then an important character moment with Nynaeve and Rand. It's funny because in the books, I do feel like their relationship is fairly important, and seeing that getting more squarely established than it is in the first book.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of like Nynaeve is one of the people that Rand trusts, but there's never it's like a sisterly kind of bond that is pretty important.
Right. Yeah, well, and specifically like older sister too. Yeah. Like she's one of the few people who can kind of talk to him in a way. Seeing the two of them and the way that they are interacting in the scene.
Nynaeve tells a story about Egwene having breakbone fever, and honestly, I expected her to admit to like having, kind of occur to her that she used the power to heal Egwene of her breakbone fever. I don't know that maybe she does or doesn't kind of make that connection. I think the audience can. Like that's possible that's what happened there, that the older wisdom was going to give Egwene a tea to help her die, and Egwene didn't want to drink it, and in the morning she was healed or was okay, and the fever broke. And it's like, well, maybe the fever broke, or maybe Nynaeve unconsciously, as again, this is what happens in the books, is that there are these women who channel without knowing it, called Wilders, which is so and so I don't know if that concept has been established here in the show yet.
Not yet.
And maybe it will, maybe it won't. But that was certainly what I was thinking when she was telling the story. That was what that was what I was kind of hinting at.
Right.
She was really just trying to illustrate Egwene's kind of strength of character, that she wasn't just going to give in to this breakbone fever and die. She's unbreakable.
Yeah. And I think you can chalk it up to Nynaeve's channeling, or you can say, Egwene's just this very tough, person, which is going to be a very important thing for her character.
Right, and then it cuts to Egwene, who's being tortured, or who has been tortured, who's focused on trying to learn how to channel to show Valda that she can, so that he'll kill her. So instead of killing Perrin.
This is a pretty good introduction to the way Egwene, how like selfless she is, how
determined and selfless.
She's I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it on my own, and I'm gonna sacrifice myself if I need to.
Meanwhile,
every
Perrin
time
admits to having killed Layla on accident, but when they were fighting the Trollocs Winter Night.
Yeah, and
Egwene, of course, says, "No, it wasn't your fault."
And he's like, no, it really was.
Amidst having axed her on accident. Then Valda walks back in and says, all right, who's going to die?
And they're silent. So he says, well, no decision is still a decision.
And then Egwene musters a little fireball.
Yeah. It's I saw somebody on Twitter of Time say, can somebody make a character account on Twitter of Time for Egwene's first fireball? Like, because you have like character accounts for like Matt's hat and stuff like that, and different things. Like, spoilers, Matt has a hat later on.
Yes. Gonna have to edit that out, Will.
I know.
Oh man. Meanwhile, Valda is flaying Perrin. He's like trying to pretty much just cut all his skin off, I think.
Something that we didn't really talk about that Valda says earlier is the whole business of he understands that women don't actually need their hands to channel, but that a lot of them kind of do anyway, that it's more of a crutch.
Right. Which is true to the books. That it's one of those things that comes up way later in the books.
Right.
Way later. Like we may have talked about it in a recent episode later.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting is here we kind of get a hint that Egwene is kind of particularly prolific in the power because she manages to channel without using her hands.
Yeah, it's like it kind of comes from her hand, but it's not like she's not like throwing a fireball. It's just like appearing around in her palm.
But I'm saying, like, even a few seconds later when she releases Perrin, that seems to be entirely without when she just burns the rope. That very satisfying moment. When Perrin stands up, he growls.
And then she stabs him in the arm or shoulder or something.
Yeah. During that flaying, you hear the howling and everything, too. So by this time, if you haven't started to suspect that there's some connection here, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned something that Valda had said. The other thing he says is that women who can channel, it must be from the Dark One to have that much power. Like, of course I have to kill them, which is like you can see the twisted logic that got him there. No one should have this kind of power, so I must kill them all.
Yeah. And I totally believe that would be real. If there were people who could channel, there would be people like Valda who believed,
of course,
they should all die.
That they're too dangerous. Works perfectly as a concept, yeah. And also someone who loves to murder kind of helps.
Yes, on top of that. Yeah, him being a psychopath is just a bonus for that.
Why couldn't you have aimed for the neck, Egwene?
You're right. That is definitely one of those don't kill off your NPCs.
Yep.
So you can have them show up later.
She grabs the rings from the hook, grabs his rings, which I thought was a fun touch.
Yeah, that was.
Take those back to the Aes Sedai, I suppose. And I guess that means that, I don't know, maybe each Aes Sedai's Great Serpent Ring is unique, maybe? Because I certainly didn't get that. I've never gotten an impression from the books, but you could see how that might be true in the show.
Well, they seem to each have a jewel that reflects their Aja.
Whereas in the books, the ring is simply a serpent biting its own tail.
Right.
Pretty simple gold ring.
Right. These rings, it looked like he had mostly killed Reds from...
Oh, I didn't catch that detail. That's a good point.
Yeah, not a huge thing, which it probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I want to say the one that was that he burned at the stake was a yellow, but looking at the set of, I see what you're saying about the set of rings is red. And they run out of the tents and the wolves are helping them. Yep,
and they come across a wolf who seems fierce, but Perrin says, nah, he's a good boy.
He's talking to us.
Yeah.
He's growl talking to us. And I think there's a scene here where a wolf jumps on a white cloak.
Yes.
And it was a scene that we had seen in like some leaked footage. Yeah.
Apparently, like, I found it someplace online and on some, I don't know, like Romanian Facebook page or something. And then we were like the source of it in the English speaking world.
Nice.
Because no one else had posted it. And so we still get likes on that. It's funny. But yeah, it would have been during this moment. Then a scene between...
Cut back to a night shot of Tar Valon with the mountain. Kind of, well, I say mountain, but it's kind of smoking. So I wonder, I guess it's a volcano in the background.
Yeah, it is a volcano. And the scene between Leandrin and Moraine here. and just establishing further that they don't like each other. Liandrin makes a decent argument for why Nynaeve might be interested in the Reds from her perspective, because she is focused on the rules and enforcing rules.
Kind of cups Moraine's face in almost like intimidating kind of gesture, like, lady, just some personal space here would be appreciated.
And Moraine is unfazed and says to her, "You're not going to get Nynaeve, so don't even bother." Then we move on to a scene with Lan and Steppen that is significant in one way. I don't know if you bothered to but a lot of people have made over this. So he has
some statues,
models,
of the statues. Yes, is it of the Forsaken, or I don't know.
That's what it seems to be. Is
so it's like, are you praying? You're praying to. You're not praying to the Forsaken, but
no, he's praying against.
He's waving a cigar around. I mean, not really, but it's like incense. It looks like a cigar.
But I don't know if you noticed, but there are 8 statues.
Oh, I did not count. That's interesting.
Yes. And so a lot of folks are thinking that this might be indicative of the number of Forsaken in the show. Most book readers would agree that reducing the number of Forsaken would probably not be huge.
I don't know that how many people are going to do a good job of naming all of them.
Right.
I only could try, but I don't know.
I think I could, but only because I just freshly looked them up in preparation for this episode. Anyway.
Pretty cool to see that come up at this point.
Yeah. So at the end of this scene, Lan says, "Hey, I'm going to hang out with you because you're clearly bummed out."
Well.
So
Switch to Alana and Moraine in bed eating.
Yeah.
Alana is eating an apple or something.
I just take this as slumber party vibes.
They're just sitting on a bed. Yeah, that came out wrong.
I saw somebody that asked the question like, "Hey, did you guys get like
a vibe?" Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. And I was like, I don't.
I think Alana was sending a vibe, and Moraine was not sending it back.
Yeah, Moraine is
like, if you're cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 2 powerful enemies running the tower. Everybody's listening to Liandrin. And so, what are you really doing, Moraine? She says.
And Moraine's like, "I'm not going to tell you." And she's like, "Well, you should tell somebody. Your secrets will eat you from the inside out." And then she leaves. And then there's this moment. And I have a very large TV. And I paused this and stared at it for a long time, trying to figure out when Moraine opens up this thing on the wall.
Oh, I also paused it several times. Like,
and
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what it is either.
I don't know what that is.
And it's,
I mean, if we're supposed to know, I don't know what that is.
I'm very curious about it.
This is my little wall safe, and I have a little thingy in there.
So my only theory is that this is some kind of object of the power that is showing her something.
Mirror on the wall. Who's the dragon reborn of them all? It's like a picture of what is it? It's like a painting thingy.
Looks like a woman standing,
looking out a window, I don't know.
I don't know. The only thought I have, which I don't have a very solid thought, I'll mention in the spoilers section, but I'm clearly this is significant because they linger on it for a long time.
They're setting something up for the next episode.
Yeah, probably. Then
back to Lan and Steppen hanging out, drinking.
Yeah. So Steppen has poured Lan some tea. Lan is drinking the tea. I don't know if Steppen's drinking the tea.
The goat's tongue tea. Okay. I totally missed that. That's what it was. I just thought they were drinking and then Lan fell asleep. Yeah. But that doesn't make sense. Lan would never do that when he's worried about his friend. Okay. Yeah. So he was drugged. Totally missed it. Yeah.
Steppen didn't give him the option of being able to try to stop him. Now, this scene is particularly, considering what happens afterwards, it's very bittersweet, but it's 2 friends just having a chat. Steppen asks about Nynaeve, and
so she's clearly got eyes for you. Lan says, "Well, she hasn't looked at me since."
He says, "Well, it's a bad idea for her. And Steppen says something about, well, life without love would be intolerable. And Lan says, well, I can tolerate a lot. And then the last words we hear from Steppen are, I know. Just seems very ominous.
Then you see Lan drink some more tea.
Yeah.
And wakes up to ominous sounding music.
I'll be this guy. I felt like when we first saw Steppen in the white at the beginning, I thought he's going to kill himself. I don't know why, but I had this like premonition. And I guess, no, here's why it was. It was because of the scene we saw in the trailer that's at the end of this episode of Lan beating his chest. That's in the white. That's actually, I was like,
specifically for Steppen? You thought Steppen was... Wow.
Yes. Because here's why. Because I was like, he's in the white. I'm like, what could get Lan to that place? And I was just like,
a character that's been made up killing himself.
Yeah. And that's
I was gonna say that that all checks out. I was gonna say that as my theory has gone, any character that's made up and is not in the books, I assume is going to die quickly.
Yep. And,
even one that I like, and as is the case in Steppen. It's a good character.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm not even mad at it, you know?
Yeah, I got no problem with it.
I mean, while it's somewhat predictable because the fact that they're not in the books, it raises the stakes for the TV show because it allows them to kill off characters. But also it does, I mean, so far anyway, they haven't kept around these characters that they've made up. So we still get to spend most of our time with
characters we know from the books.
Yes, we've got the shot of Lan waking up, realizing he was drugged.
Yeah, finds Steppen having slit his own wrists, or stabbed himself with a knife in the belly.
Yeah,
and then Lan is sad.
Yeah,
it's like in front of the statues of
warders, of the warders
in front of the hall.
Kind of a symbolic moment. He clearly feels that he failed as a warder,
right? And Lan feels like he failed Steppen by letting him drug him.
And so, this is such a hugely emotional scene. I almost wish that they did the thing that they do at the end of a lot of shows when there's been a suicide, where they're like, if you or anyone you know,
they have
the hotline. Just because I always think about that. I had I have some friends who their son died of suicide several years ago, and they found him, and I just know how that impacts a person.
Gosh.
And so seeing this, I just like, this is finding somebody close to you, which it almost always is. That's
of course.
Somebody close that finds them after the fact, is just heartbreaking. And so the scene, to me, it makes complete sense that Lan would break down in this moment when given permission.
Of course.
And kind of an assignment actually here.
Chanting.
Right. To grieve for everybody. And then you have this beautiful moment of the bond where Moraine is feeling what Lan is feeling as he beats his chest and yells. I saw people take a gif of this and put the quote, "The death is lighter than a feather, duty heavier than a mountain."
Nice.
And it's like, and then I saw somebody comment, "How dare you? How dare you do that?"
How very dare you.
But interesting, you that Nynaeve clearly wanted to be there for this moment.
Certainly not a scene in the books. Very effective.
Yes,
works well. Needed to be after the previous scene. You almost had to have some grieving,
right? Some moment like this. I do think it actually is earned. I was one of the people who was kind of questioning whether or not, because of the moment in the trailer of Lan screaming like that, are we going to earn having Lan, the man carved of stone, screaming like that in the first season? But largely, I think we got.
It is giving some dynamism to the character that is needed and works, and it is a change, but it's not a change change untrue to the character, and it can be you could see in the future it can be a foil to the way he behaves at another.
Yep. No, I think it's good. Well, any other thoughts before we go into spoilers?
Nope.
All right. I'm about to spoil everything. Maybe not just these books, but maybe like other books that haven't even been written yet. So if you,
heck yeah, I want that.
Yeah, if you don't want to be spoiled, then leave. Okay, let me pull up my notes here.
Spoiler notes, good.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, Dragonmount. You know, I feel like they very strategically have not mentioned that that's what it is yet.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, that would be like,
that would have been a real tell that Rand.
Right.
Rand said, I know that place. It's Dragonmount. Oh, I know it. Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's Dragonmount? Oh, I've never heard of that.
That's my mount.
Yeah. You know, all the all the wolf stuff with Perrin was really fun to see, the howling and everything.
I halfway wonder if they're going to actually turn him into a werewolf and like.
Yeah, well, like having him stand up. I say that
jokingly, but I don't know that they're not.
Having him stand up and actually have like a growl.
Yeah.
When that was kind of a fun. So, like I say, you know, we had the statues of the Forsaken, but there's only 8 instead of 13.
Maybe that's our indication that 8 is the number for a circle. Not really, I don't know.
Well, also, there's 8 seasons, so it would kind of go along with the whole
symmetry.
boss battle. Yeah. Thing.
Okay. Yeah,
there were 8 seasons planned.
Yeah. All right.
It makes me wonder if they're going to go forego with them getting spun out into the pattern after they die.
I mean, would be such a difficult concept to convey in a TV.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it in exposition, obviously, but then, I'm just thinking of like, you have to do kind of like a Looper thing a little bit where you're Joseph Gordon-Levitt, being Bruce. Anyway, so I'm okay with them not doing that.
The only thing is, like, I do like having Ishamael Moradin as a through line. But other than that, I don't. To me,
I would be okay with them just doing Moradin, not doing Arengar and Ossengar.
Yeah,
because Arengar and Ossengar are so much a part of the slog that are not memorable or interesting.
They don't really
be fine
add
if
anything. And either just have Lanfear straight up show back up again.
Yeah, that would be okay. That would be completely. That would be. We're
squarely
acceptable.
In spoilers here. So,
yeah, of course. Yeah, we better have. Yeah.
The whole thing of Moraine doesn't die. She doesn't actually die.
Why would Lanfear?
Exactly.
Because all she did was tackle her through a mirror.
They went through the same
twisted doorway
thing. Yeah. So the Forsaken. I'm thinking we'll get Ishamael.
Gotta have Ravine.
Ravine, Asmodean.
So you gotta have Samael. I really think you do.
And I think you could do. I think you could mash up Samael and Damandred to some degree. The Damandred becomes a much more important character at the end.
He's a bit of a schemer. Yeah. Right.
And then I could. You have to have Lanfear, Moghedien, and Greyendal, and then you can mash up Cimarog and Masana.
Yeah, I'd probably do that in my head already. I know Masana's the one in the White Tower. It's like,
but so cutting out for sure Balthamel.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like, why not? Yeah, why even have the two of them at the Eye of the World and it not just be Ishamael? Although especially if he's coming back because he's already there. So it seems weird to have all 3 of them there.
Right.
That was always a weird series of events. So I have no problem with them just cutting that out entirely, having it be just the big battle with Ishamael.
And like I said, if they kind of mash up Masana and Cimarog, then you wouldn't have Masana probably. Agenor, Samael and Ravine. Robin.
Definitely need Asmodean.
Yes, you have to have Asmodean. You have to, to me, it's like Ishamael obviously is in there. So after that,
Lanfear
you have to
obviously
have
is
Lanfear.
In there. Yeah. Asmodean is the other one.
Right. Definitely. And then Greyendal. Yeah. And maybe Moghedien after that. And then Ravine, I agree with you. I feel like he's got to be in there. And then the Samael, Damandred.
I would want even if the events are different, I feel like Samael's character and his kind of backstory are interesting enough that I'd want to keep that. Wouldn't it be okay if he's not, if he doesn't die in Shadar Logoth and, and all his schemings, and like all the stuff around him in the middle of the slog, don't care if they do that. I just want the character in the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm the same way. Like, I mean, I would not be shocked. So if they cut out, spoiling towards the very end, if they cut out the whole Shara thing where Demandred shows up with this whole other army at the end, which is very Return of the King-esque, of like the Easterlings showing up last minute, up the ante. It's if they cut that out, which I could completely see them doing, I don't want them to, but I understand the arguments for it because it does kind of come out of the clear blue sky.
Yep.
I could see them completely cutting Demandred then, because that's the only thing ultimately that I think he really does that is totally necessary and unique, especially since there's the whole confusion over, or they could mash up Demandred and
Samael could get away and go to Shara perhaps instead of dying in Shadar Logoth.
Well, I was just going to say, like, if they do the thing that a lot of readers thought Jordan was doing and make Taim and Demandred the same character,
that would be much more satisfying than Taim being just awful and a dark friend the whole time, just the way we thought he was.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
At least if there was no twist to Taim's character at all, like, it felt like that was all very unsatisfying. Like, at least if he had ended up being a Forsaken, it would have been like, oh, okay. So
instead of just Osengar being Deshiva, which was stupid, and he just kind of dies randomly in that battle at the end of Winter's Heart. Like, that was just a waste of time all around.
Yeah, it's just
definitely okay with that not happening.
Right. No, I'm sure they're going to use the Forsaken to much greater effect, particularly the kind of the second tier, because you have obviously Ishamael and Lanfear kind of at the top there of like, plot wise, and then Asmodean, and then kind of Moghedien and Ravine and Grandal. And then after that, Samael and or Demandred. And then, from there you have the Agonor, Balthamel, Bilal, Cimarog, Masana, like those are the ones that it's like you could do without pretty easily. Yep. So it's in a lot of ways, Masana is just so that Egwene has something to do in the later books.
Gets back to the White Tower.
And Cimarog is kind of almost just so Cadsuane has some things to do with Cimarog towards the end, which I know some people don't even like those scenes. So anyway, those were my spoiler thoughts. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, good stuff. The talkie, I think it's setting up next week being a fun. They're not going to have 2 talkies in a row. I bet this next one's going to be a real gangbuster.
Yep. Here's hoping anyway. All right. Well, thanks for listening. You can always email us at stuff@tsmpodcast.com or fill out our contact form at tsmpodcast.com, or visit us on all the socials at Podcast TSM on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and say hello. We have gotten a few comments, but I think what I've decided to do is that we'll kind of do a mailbag episode at the end
of the season.
That's
a good idea.
And kind of respond because we've gotten some good things to talk about, but I think it would probably be more fun to be able to kind of address it all.
Yeah, I like that.
Have a reason to go back and look at it. So we'll do that at some point. And until next time, Tai'Shar Manetheren.